day, I just wanted to highlight and included in the packet is a flyer for this event. It's an event that's hosted by the State SELPA organization, in which the State SELPA organizes guest speakers and highlights pieces of legislation such as those that I brought forward in prior meetings, and creates an opportunity in which Community Advisory Committee officers can join a SELPA director, attend the event, and then in Sacramento, and then go over and actually advocate on behalf of legislation and share their stories at the state capitol. So I'm very pleased to share that I will be joining our CAC vice chair and participating in this event for this year. And that's all. It's just an informational item, and in case you have any questions.
Who is the vice chair? Is it Maya?
Mm-hmm. Maya Ginley.
Okay, awesome. I don't see Mr. Harris here, so I guess we will move on. So we have discussion action items. Look like they're information only, but we can go on to the SELPA local plan.
Okay, perfect. This is just an information update for the board that we are in the process of drafting the local plan for the 24-25 school year. As you are probably aware, we do this in collaboration with our Community Advisory Committee. So on April 9th, we will be presenting the draft plan to the CAC, and that opens a 30-day review window in which, of course, at the meeting, but in general, they can provide us with feedback. And so with this timeline, we are on schedule and anticipate bringing back the collaboratively drafted local plan for your review at the June 18th board meeting.
Perfect. And then we can go to number 2, staffing updates.
Okay, thank you. As we committed earlier, just always wanting to bring the same visual of our staffing vacancies in special education for your review. This has not changed since our last meeting, and I just want to highlight as we anticipate receiving retirements or potential notices of resignations and things like that moving forward, this is a reflection of our vacancies as of today. And so, but they have not adjusted. We continue to try to identify and seek out individuals to fill our teaching vacancies and assistive technology.
So these ones here would reflect if somebody had given their resignation notice or something today, then this would be updated, or would be next time?
That would be for next time, because
Okay.
and what we could do, if it would be your preference, we could display the staffing as of this year, because many people are on contract through the end of this year, versus then if they submit a resignation, they're informing us that they don't intend to be employed for the 24-25 school year.
Does anybody have any questions or anything about that?
I do. Can I just get a clarification? So these vacancies are ones that we have today, not ones that we anticipate having in the fall.
Correct. Yes.
Do we already know that these numbers are different for the fall?
No, and it's just the beginning of kind of the season that people make personal, adjustments and decisions in their transitions of employment. So I anticipate there's the potential that this could adjust quite a bit over the course of the next couple of months, but it doesn't, to my knowledge, at this time I wouldn't be presenting a different grid to you.
So we have current.
Actually, I take that back with one exception. I apologize for interrupting, but there's one exception with the school psychologist. So right now, this reflects one vacancy that we are currently filling with a contractor, but we have received one resignation from one of our school psychologists for next year. And actually, I would offer we held interviews today for this vacancy and are noting that. So that's just a lovely example of how quickly it can change and our efforts for recruitment and retention. Yeah.
So we have currently posted openings for the 2 mod severe and the 2 mild mod teachers.
Yes, that's correct.
Applicants.
Correct. Yes. Or there have been applicants, sites have had interviews as an example, and for a variety of reasons it hasn't worked out. I know, for example, that two of the vacancies for the mild moderate, they're located at Ione Junior High. They've held multiple interviews with candidates that have applied. Either their application wasn't complete, but we still sought them out in order to be able to see could they complete their application and submit all the paperwork. There's individuals that apply from out of state that we also interview, but then, there's a lot of logistics that play into then their decision of whether they're relocating, and yeah.
I got one question on the speech and language pathologist positions. I don't remember from last year, but have we always been looking to fill those positions? Have we ever had anyone that's an employee as far as filling that position, or are they always contract? Or I guess what I'm wondering is, what's the outlook? Are we looking at the same as it has been for filling those?
I think I would offer, and I can't really speak historically, I might turn to Jared. In general, though, I would say, we'll do our very best. But separately from this, as part of the functions of the SELPA, we also are looking at establishing new non-public school and non-public agency contracts for next year. So I'm actively trying to identify more contracting partners that commit to us to be in person. I would offer, just on my own experience, it is highly unlikely that we will be able to hire local individuals directly that will be able to fill the number of speech and language vacancies that we have. It is a systemic statewide issue, especially because one of the unintended consequences of the pandemic is many of our services now legally can be provided virtually. And so some contractors, for example, they make employment of only providing virtual service. And if that's the preference of the employee, they can decline to provide in-person services to us as a contracting piece. So I'll definitely turn to Jared if there's any other things to highlight from last year, but.
Yeah, I believe in my 7 years, we have not had all of our speech positions filled in any given year. We've always had 2, 3, I think the most we had was 4 actual speech language pathologist employees, but we've always been short of the overall need and needed to contract out to fulfill all the services. So this is not a new issue.
I didn't think it was.
Yeah.
I was wondering kind of if anything's looking as a positive change. But
So the benefit with, I don't know if I want to call it that, an advantage to the contracts when it comes to hiring is those contracts are set up with 30-day notices for termination. So we can leave these jobs open if we find a speech language pathologist and hire one. It typically takes us at least 30 days to onboard someone anyway, and so we can then notify the contracting agency. Typically, we wouldn't fully eliminate the contract because we have multiple needs, but reduce the contract accordingly, and then bring in our own employee, which is cheaper, by the way. The contracted services cost more than hiring a speech language pathologist. So,
thank you.
Just a quick question on that too, not to get too off subject here, but do we find that having these virtual services are beneficial in any way? I mean, I know that, for example, my son receives speech therapy services. He's in preschool and he does virtual speech, and I was very hesitant about even wanting to attempt something like that. I'm like, he's autistic and he's not going to sit on a computer and do speech. It's different than what I think sometimes it's perceived to be. It was for me anyway, with him doing manipulative and stuff, and it does help a little bit, but is there a downfall a lot of times with having virtual versus in person? Because
I think, yeah, that's a great question. I think in general, just like the IEP process is intended, we really have to look at every individual student's circumstances in order to make that determination. And I think, there are students that are unable to make adequate progress on their IEP goals through that. And, we need to consider that as well for the staffing that we have and their assignments, for next year. and future years in general. But overall, virtual access is deemed to be an appropriate way for students to receive services. And so other than, beyond that, we need to look at the individual circumstances of the students as you described and then help to make a determination.
So I guess my next question would be like, if that student is not making, if they were using virtual service or whatever, and they're not making what either their parents would deem or their teacher, whoever it is that's involved in their IEP case, isn't making adequate progress, but we don't have an in-person individual, how does that affect the district? How does that affect, well, it clearly affects the student in a
Right.
negative way, but also potentially the district. Does that leave us open for litigation, or is it not because we are technically providing that service to them?
Yeah. I'm just trying to decide what part of that question to answer first. No, because it's a great question. It's just, it could go, and actually that, it kind of complements another item on our agenda. So I would say in general, of course, with like that student focused lens, we always want to be able to give them what they need. And so in regards to them, if a child is not making adequate progress on their IEPs, which is deemed and reported out by the related service provider, part of it that we have to analyze is how are they accessing, what are our other options, reevaluating it. But that's really when it comes down to compensatory education, which we also have talked about previously. And while I would say that there are liabilities for the district in that regard, it's also understood that there's, besides increasing our recruitment efforts, there's little left to be seen in regards to what the district's options are. And I think for my standpoint as your SELPA director, I also want to acknowledge that in our rural community, just simply providing a letter to families that makes a statement of, well, we owe you compensatory ed, here's an amount that you could access on your own. There are limitations that our families experience in regards to most of them, the providers they would have access to. It's the same issue, right? They're located in Sacramento, Folsom at best. And so if there are transportation challenges. So I think in general, I just want to express the commitment from the SELPA on behalf of the district and the county that we want to work with families, that we understand this is literally a rock and a hard place kind of a situation, that we want to provide the best quality service to students, given the staffing restraints and then the limitations that individuals have. We need to find creative and alternative options. And I'll actually maybe bring this example back up when we address and talk about alternative dispute resolution, because we don't want families to feel that in that circumstance, the only option they have is due process, in the sense of filing due process. We want to have a more collaborative approach to thinking of those creative options.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions on that one?
I do. I just was looking for a little bit of context on, so when you say we have 4 speech and language pathology vacancies, do we have any on our staff?
We have 2 individuals that are employed directly with the district.
So it's 4 out of 6? Okay.
Okay. So we can move on then, it looks like, to number 3, compliance and improvement monitoring update.
Okay, thank you. So the compliance and improvement monitoring process is outlined by the Department of Education. It is a framework, as is described in the description, that is a tiered system. So really that the CDE is using that tiered system like we do for MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, for compliance and improvement monitoring. And so both the Amador Unified and Amador County Office of Education are in a tier of the compliance monitoring and the SIM process, as if we needed another acronym. But the SIM process, it outlines a series of steps and activities in order to try to get us out of the compliance and monitoring process. So the unified system is in level 2, which required us to complete an in-depth investigation into developing action steps that we are going to be pursuing over the course of the next year. Excuse me, let me just get a drink of water. And they include staff training and also recruitment. So in both of these plans and in the in-depth, part of our challenge is related to the vacancies that we have. So focusing on collaborating with the Human Resources Department in regards to recruitment and retention efforts was outlined. For the County Office of Education, the in-depth review was actually done in years prior, and so what we were doing this year was providing a progress update, so the form looks slightly differently. And in that, it's based on the data, it was showing us that we really need to be looking at our child find efforts, that certain populations of our students, specifically our Hispanic students, were underrepresented when we looked across the board of who was being identified early through the speech and language. So we are working on establishing or reestablishing our partnerships with community-based organizations such as those of First Five in order to expand our child find efforts, which is, of course, our obligation to seek out and serve, identify and serve individuals that have eligibility for special education. And then lastly, the action item of making it accessible through translation and interpretation supports and services. So I just wanted to provide you with a copy of both of the plans that were submitted to the Department of Ed, highlight how the action items in here also align with the district's strategic plan. We always want to make sure that our global plans are aligned, and of course answer any questions that you may have. This will not be the last time you hear of this. We receive these determination letters every year, so I would anticipate in June I will be bringing back communications from the Department of Ed and in regards to what level we're at for next year, the following year, which we have kind of been through the statewide association been noticed that it's highly likely we'll be in the same levels just based on how the Department of Ed is analyzing the data. So I'm happy to answer any questions. But this is also just for your information.
Anybody have any questions or comments about that one? No? Okay. Okay, so we can move on to item number 4, alternative dispute resolution.
Okay, so the alternative dispute resolution process is really intended to be built at the local level in order to support both district, or in our case, district county office, and families when they do reach a place of disagreement through the IEP process. And so this has been really, it's grown over the course of the last few years to the extent that the Department of Ed has identified one of the SELPAs to be a leader of this in the state. They have partnered in order to start hosting annual conferences. So we're also really happy to share that one of our employees, one of our special education directors, Joshua Brock, was also able to go with a CAC officer, again, Maya Ginley, in order to participate in the conference and bring learning back. So we intend to continue to grow this, start to create some marketing in collaboration with our communication specialists, et cetera. But in order to essentially have a different avenue than filing for due process, and also when IEP teams feel like they reach a stalemate in order to be able to keep the conversation going. So I'm very pleased and excited about this. I'm appreciative for the Community Advisory Committee to be a partner to us in this. I recognize that oftentimes from families' perspective, they need someone that they can directly relate in order to be able to participate and you know, share in their ideas and experience. So again, just for your information, but wanted to highlight this good work.
Yeah, I was able to talk with Maya a little bit at one of the last, not the CAC meeting, but it was like community meeting thing that I went to. And so she was very excited about the process and excited to have a little bit more actual involvement from the CAC, because I don't really know historically how that's been, but just kind of from word on the street, I guess, is that there hasn't been much up until very recently. I don't know if anybody else can speak to that, but, so I thought that that was moving in a positive direction.
Yeah, Sadie's not going to say this, but that is something that, one of the examples of things that have changed since she arrived is working a lot closer with the CAC and providing them with these kinds of opportunities, which should have been happening in the past that weren't. So.
Does anybody else have questions or comments about any of this? No? Okay, so looks like we can go on to our next meeting date, which is Tuesday, it's a Tuesday, June 18th, scheduled here at 5 PM, I'm going to guess. And then that is it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Calling to order the Amador County Unified School District Board meeting. It is 5:30. Everyone is in attendance. We have no public comment on closed session, so we are going to retire. We will return at approximately 6:30, hopefully on time tonight. We will be back. Okay. Okay. We're going to go ahead and call to order. It is 6:30. We are reconvening after closed session. We have 2 items to report out. The board approved to readmit item 5. That is case number 23/24-1. That was approved unanimously. We also approved a stipulated expulsion, item 6. That's case number 23/24-3. That was also a unanimous approval. Mr. Critchfield, are there any deletions or corrections to the agenda?
Not at this time.
Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have 3 presentations and recognitions tonight. I'm going to go in the order they are on the agenda, unless. So we have Ione Elementary and Mr. Huss. Welcome.
When I first met you, I didn't need these.
Good evening, members of the school board and members of the district leadership.
One moment, Mr. Huss.
I don't think your microphone's on, Mr. Huss. Okay.
Okay.
Try it now.
Good evening, members of the school board and members of the district leadership team. It is my honor to be here tonight to recognize 5 members of the amazing staff at Ione Elementary School. 100 years ago, Ione Grammar School had 125 students, kindergarten through 8th grade. Today, Ione Elementary has 529 students, TK through 5th grade, supported by a group of teachers, aides, secretaries, and custodians that do amazing things each day to make sure every student feels supported, cared for, and receive the best education possible. While I wish I could recognize all the members of the staff, I'll limit it tonight to only 5. The first staff member I'd like to recognize tonight is Special Education Instructional Aide Carla Cantwell. When I invited Carla to tonight's board meeting so I could recognize Carla for her dedication to the students of Ione Elementary and for all of her work on campus, Carla told me, "Oh, I can't do that. I will pass out." So, not wanting to call 911 tonight, I told Carla I would recognize her even though she's not here. Carla started volunteering at Ione Elementary in 1997 and soon after became a campus aide before working her way into the current position. Carla quietly shows up each day, helps out where needed, and helps some of the most struggling students find success. Carla demonstrates patience with every student, provides lessons and student support expertly, and gets the most out of the students she works with by holding them to a high standard while making learning fun and meaningful. Carla is a very amazing person and does an outstanding job supporting our students. Next, I'd like to recognize Diane Basler and Mary Kirkwood Yates. And when I was thinking of who I wanted to recognize from Ione Elementary, I immediately went to our cafeteria staff. I discovered years ago that our campus can function well when a teacher, custodian, an aide, office staff, or a principal are gone. But if the cafeteria staff doesn't show up, our school would erupt into a huge ball of chaos. At Ione Elementary, it's not Diane or Mary. It is Diane and Mary. You can't mention one without the other. They are a true team supporting our students and giving our cafeteria a positive atmosphere. Diane and Mary do more than make delicious breakfast and lunches. Diane and Mary are 2 of the first adults students see in the morning, greeting students with a smile and a kind word before providing them with a nutritious breakfast. They get our students off to class in a positive mood, well-fed, and happier for entering Diane and Mary's cafeteria. And after a few hours later, after making, serving, and cleaning up from breakfast, Diane and Mary magically provide all students with an amazing lunch with that same positive attitude and warm smile. Ione Elementary would not be the great little school that it is without Diane Basler and Mary Kirkwood Yates. Next are 2 of our amazing kindergarten teachers. First is McKenna Cabring. McKenna is a shining example of the success of our local schools, what our local schools produce, as McKenna attended Jackson Elementary School, Jackson Junior High School, and Argonaut High School. McKenna is in her third year teaching at Ione Elementary. McKenna goes the extra mile to make sure her students have an engaging and warm classroom. This past holiday season, as it approached, McKenna transformed her classroom into the Polar Express. Students walked into the classroom through a train tunnel and sat at tables that were turned into train cars. The entire classroom was a magical learning environment. And this is just one example of how McKenna's classroom transforms throughout the school year to give students a unique, meaningful experience. McKenna accompanies this classroom environment with engaging lessons, meaningful centers, and high expectations. McKenna has outstanding character, puts her best effort into each school day, and is a team player. It is truly inspiring having McKenna Cabry on campus each day and watching her work her magic on all of her students. The last staff member I would like to recognize tonight is Conjetta Davey, another amazing kindergarten teacher. Conjetta is one of the most positive and supportive individuals you can meet, as well as intelligent, hardworking, and caring. This is McKenna's first year teaching kindergarten, and Conjetta took it upon herself to support McKenna, help her when she could, provide guidance, and be a sounding board. Nobody asked Conjetta to do these things. Conjetta did them because it is in her DNA. Conjetta wants to make sure everyone around her is given the best chance to succeed in educating students and is willing to support them in that effort. In December, Conjetta once again showed who she is at her core when her kindergarten teammate needed help the most. As some of you may know, one of our teachers, Ashley Costello, has a 1-year-old son who was recently diagnosed with leukemia. Like all the Ione Elementary staff, Conjetta stepped up to provide support and check-ins with Ashley and helped with the fundraising dinner. But Conjetta also has gone the extra mile by mentoring and supporting the long-term substitute teacher who has taken over Ashley's classroom. And Conjetta seeks no glory for her efforts, but tonight I wanted to recognize Conjetta in front of the board to make sure she realizes that all she does to support others on campus is being noticed and that she is making a difference in the lives of her students and our school staff. These are just 5 of the amazing staff members that make Ione Elementary an amazing and caring place for students to learn and grow. Thank you for the time tonight, board members, and allowing me to recognize these amazing individuals.
Thank you, Mr. Huss. Next, we have Mrs. Becerra from Ione Junior High.
Please do not leave without getting your picture taken from Haley. You don't have a choice in the matter. Sorry.
Okay, I think it works. Good evening, Board President, Board members, District Administration, and everyone present this evening. I want to thank you for the opportunity to highlight, acknowledge, and celebrate some of our remarkable staff members from Ione Junior High. Throughout the academic year, the commitment and hard work demonstrated by our staff have been nothing short of extraordinary. Each day, they have shown unweaving dedication to our students, going above and beyond to ensure their success both inside and outside the classroom. Whether it's hosting student clubs at lunch, running snack bars at home games, supporting and guiding students with specific needs, or taking the time to make academics accessible to all students, their efforts have made a significant positive impact and established a meaningful relationships with our students to help make a difference. This year, selecting a few individuals for recognitions proved to be an incredibly challenging task. The level of excellence displayed by our Ione Junior staff team made it difficult to choose just a handful for special accommodations. From teachers to administrative staff to support personnel, every member of our staff has contributed significantly to the positive learning environment here at Ione Junior High. However, after careful consideration, we have identified 5 individuals whose contributions stood out even among our exceptional staff. These individuals have consistently exemplified the values of our school community and have made a lasting impact in the lives of our students. Ms. Clement and I will be taking turns reading and recognizing. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Dillon.
Okay, so Mr. Dylan Jarman. All right. Okay. If you ask any 8th grader at Ione Junior High who they trust most on campus, almost every single one would mention Mr. Jarman. Some of the phrases students have used to describe him include low-key strict, genuinely cares about you without being weird about it, and okay at Mario Kart. Dylan is not just a teacher, he's a fierce advocate for students, and his classroom is one we'd all love to be part of. His class is interesting and it's fun. In fact, today he was hosting a talk show with historical figures as guests, and I cannot wait to see who shows up in his class tomorrow. Without a doubt, we are truly grateful to have him as an integral part of our school community. So thank you, Mr. DJ.
The next person is Athena Orlando. Athena stepped in as a long-term substitute teacher in the PE position. She has truly gone above and beyond, taking immense personal pride in running the program. She has dedicated herself tirelessly to ensuring that our students have the opportunity to actively be engaged in class, including coaching sports, and even taking the initiative to help in the after-school snack bars. Her commitment of doing her best is evident in everything she does, and she has formed a strong connection with students who face some additional social challenges. We are truly grateful for her dedication and her positive impact in our school community. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Christy Watson. Ms. Watson has a class that as an administrator and former science teacher, I'm very proud of. She puts a lot of care into her lessons and creates fun and engaging activities for the students. For example, for her unit on polymers and their impact on the environment, she created a display, and I'm not exaggerating, in front of her classroom that would rival anything you would see in a science museum. I mean, she made trash look amazing. I regret not having a photo here for you all to see.
I have one on my phone.
She always goes out of her way to teach about concepts in a novel way that will get our students' attention. Just last week, maybe it was this week because weeks kind of blend together, I couldn't figure out what smelled so good in the hallway. And that's kind of unusual in a junior high for something to smell good. And it turns out her students were melting starbursts in her classroom to simulate the rock cycle. So I got to the bottom of where that smell was coming from. Christy has 2 children who are students at Ione Junior High, yet she treats all of those students as if they're her own. Christy's class is definitely one of my happy places on campus, and we are grateful to have her at Ione Junior High.
Our next person is Crystal Woods. Ms. Woods is an invaluable member of our team, serving as one of our long-term substitute teachers since the beginning of the school year. Throughout her time with us, she has consistently exhibited the skill and determinations typically associated with a seasoned classroom teacher. Her ability to connect with students on a meaningful level, coupled with exemplary classroom management skills, has been truly commendable. Moreover, Mrs. Woods has cultivated a nurturing and engaging classroom environment where students feel supported and motivated to learn. You walk into her classroom and it is so well organized. It is with great satisfaction that I have observed Mrs. Wood's commitment to her professional development, as she has recently enrolled in a credential program. Yay. This decision reflects her dedication and continuous improvement and signifies her aspiration to further enhance her teaching capabilities. Given her remarkable performance and evident passion for teaching, I am optimistic about her future prospects within our district. Yeah.
All right, Mrs. Susanna Flores. My style icon, I'll just put that out. Mrs. Flores is our outstanding school counselor, whose dedication for student safety and well-being is unwavering. With her compassionate demeanor and open-hearted approach, Mrs. Flores creates a nurturing environment where students feel safe to express themselves and to seek support. She goes above and beyond to build strong relationships with students, staff, and parents, fostering a sense of trust and collaboration across the school community. Mrs. Flores works tirelessly to ensure that every student's safety concerns are addressed promptly and effectively, collaborates with all parties involved to implement proactive measures and support systems. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get to myself and Ms. Becerra because Mrs. Flores is so good at her job. Her commitment to creating a safe and supportive school environment makes her an invaluable asset to our students and our school community as a whole. Thank you, Mrs. Flores.
We thank them all for their outstanding achievements this school year. Thank you. Their dedication, passion, and tireless efforts have truly made a difference in the lives of our students, and we are incredibly grateful for their contributions. As we reflect on this past year and look forward to the future, let's continue to support and uplift one another as a school community. Together, we can achieve greater success and continue to provide the best possible education for our students. Once again, thank you for your time to highlight our amazing staff members for their hard work, dedication, commitment, and excellence. Their efforts have not gone unnoticed, and we are proud to have such a talented and dedicated team at our own junior high. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Becerra. And last, we have Mrs. Gravette with Jackson Elementary.
Board members, Deputy Superintendent Crutchfield, and cabinet members, thank you so much for having me here tonight. My name is Nicole Gravette. I'm the proud principal at Jackson Elementary School. Some of you may not be familiar with Jackson Elementary, so I'm going to take just a quick moment to highlight some of the wonderful things that we have going on. So Jackson has amazing students, staff, and parents. Our students are kind, supportive, and inclusive. You'll regularly see them helping out in the cafeteria, working with staff on our Safe School Ambassador program, or working with other classes for reading buddies. Our parent organization, Just Up, is fantastic and supports students and staff regularly, as well as the community, by hosting events such as our Fall Festival, Jogathon, and new this year, Bingo Night. And for our staff, they are a true family who supports students every single day. They are kind and supportive, but also have very high expectations for our students. It's been my privilege to work alongside each and every one of them, and it's rare to work with a staff that is so supportive, kind, and flexible. I could honestly go on and on about them, but tonight I'm going to honor five teachers and staff that embody every aspect of being authentic, courageous, fun. They build meaningful relationships, and they have integrity. So the first staff member that I would like to recognize is Mrs. Nikki Silvera. Mrs. Silvera is a leader on our campus. She's done an amazing job of guiding our new kindergarten team. She's compassionate, caring, inclusive, and has high expectations of her students. You can tell that she loves what she does every single day, and that love transfers to her students and families. She's one of the best communicators that I know. They're laughing because they know that. And I am privileged to work alongside her. I am a secondary teacher by nature, so moving to Jackson Elementary, I did not have a lot of experience with elementary, with the exception of my own kids. So especially not kindergarten. When I started at Jackson, Ms. Silvera was wonderful at guiding me through how kindergarten might be a little bit different than all the other grade levels. I soon realized why you don't ask a room full of kindergarten students if they have any questions. She makes teaching kindergarten look easy, and for that alone, she deserves this recognition. So congratulations, and the next staff member is Miss Danae Merton. Miss Merton was part of the fabulous kindergarten team until this year when I came to her with a crazy idea to move her into second grade to help guide a new team of teachers. She never once pushed back. She seamlessly moved into second grade with a positive attitude and excitement that I always see her bring to her students. Miss Merton has the amazing job of being my teacher in charge when I'm gone. So she moves between teaching and administration seamlessly, and I could not do that without her. She's cheerful, excited, does whatever she needs to help our students and staff. And so I want to thank you for everything that you do to make Jackson such a special place. The next staff member is Miss Paula Cahill. Mrs. Cahill leads our first grade team, and there's no one like her. She is absolutely the best. Her students and parents adore her. I recently had a visit from CDE for FPM, and we all know how often CDE gives out kind and positive feedback. When the auditors left Mrs. Cahill's classroom, they had nothing but positive and kind words to say about her teaching, her class environment, and her students. To me, this says it all. She is an absolute treasure that Jackson Elementary is lucky to have. So, thank you. The next two staff members were unable to attend tonight, but I still want to recognize them. The first is Mrs. Donna McDermott. She currently works as an aide in Mrs. Crow's class. Donna has an excellent work ethic and is dedicated to students at Jackson Elementary. She has positive relationships with family members and our community. She bridges the gap for information, which is awesome. If you have a question, she's most likely to have the answer. She arrives early, works collaboratively with all staff to help set up not just Mrs. Crow's classroom, but all classrooms. She is amazing. She helps kids around playground, anything and everything. If you need her to do something, she does it. So we couldn't imagine Jackson Elementary without her. So I'd like to recognize her. And the last is Mrs. Kelly Borio. She also works as an aide in Mrs. Crow's class. She is an amazing artist. She creates art for Mrs. Crow's class, her students. She decorates the OH building, which if you've ever had the privilege of walking through there, it is fantastic. She created an entire Christmas, train Polar Express throughout the entire, it even lit up and had noise. Like, it was amazing. She purposefully suggests projects that work on strengthening fine motor skills and building up sensory tolerance. She also puts up a monthly bulletin board aimed at raising awareness and supporting specific causes. So we couldn't imagine either one of these support providers. We couldn't imagine Jackson without them. So I'd like to recognize both of them. And thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much. Next, we have employee organizations. For ACTA, is Mrs. Jensen here to speak? Okay.
Hello, members of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Critchfield, and members of Cabinet. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you tonight. The state budget is announced in January. It is then haggled over, revised, changed until May, when an official adjustment is made and likely signed during summer. Well, an 8.22% COLA was settled at least by May of 2023. Why is it then the unions are still waiting for a fair pay settlement nearly a year later? Let me first start with the intention of a COLA distribution. The state government has a Department of Finance that investigates and measures what amount of money will keep salaries comparable year to year. Obviously, the prices of goods and services fluctuate, and when inflation hits, the funding will reflect an attempt to help educators preserve their buying power. So let me be clear. The 8.22% is not a pay raise. It is simply designed to help employees not be in a worse financial position than they were a year prior. But yet, here we are in 2024, and no fair offer has been provided. The district received their money, though we are at the end of March losing it. In fact, teachers are over 9% below the rate of inflation since 2008-2009. We use that year because that is when the teacher union worked to help keep the district solvent. We gave back money for 2 years and had 0 raises for 2 more. At the exact same time, the district received positive COLAs 3 of those 4 years. We are still waiting to be made whole. Many districts around the state try to keep the COLA, while others pass it on as a matter of principle. Obviously, in ACUSD, we must negotiate, but even that is not happening. Nothing, and let me repeat, nothing is preventing the district from fairly negotiating a pay increase. Please provide direction to the district to enter negotiations on April 11th with a plan to honorably negotiate with ACTA. Thank you for your attention.
Mrs. Martz? For CSEA, Mrs. Martz.
Good evening, Board, Mr. Critchfield, and Cabinet. Thank you for allowing me to be up here tonight. I've decided tonight that I want Jeannie Jensen to be my new speechwriter. So I want to start off by thanking you all for hearing the voices of my members, the teachers, and the community at the last board meeting. I am grateful to know that you are a board of integrity and that you care about our students and staff. I thank you for all that you're doing for this school district in its entirety. I want to report that negotiations are going smoothly. We're not as far along as the teachers are right now, but we have been working on all of the articles in our contract so that we can polish them up and bring them into language that is been long overdue. It's so outdated. We meet tomorrow with the district, and CSEA has several new proposals to give the district that I am hopeful will be received favorably. We have a long way to go since we are working on our entire contract, but we are hard workers who believe in what's best for our students and staff. And when I say we, I mean CSEA and the district. We're both hard workers, and we both want the best for all involved. How did it get to be March, the last week of March already? I'm like so confused over that. Year has gone by so quickly, and before we know it, summer break will be upon us. But before that, we have my favorite week of the year, and that is CSEW. And that stands for Classified School Employees Week, which will be May 19th through the 25th. I want you to mark your calendars for May 23rd, as we will be celebrating with a dinner and a movie night at Argonaut High School. And I hope that you all will be able to attend. I was hoping to invite our 2 high schoolers as well. Flyers are going to be coming out soon, and I'll send you one in an email. Also for this year, for CSEW, I want to step it up a little and ask our parents, teachers, and administrators to join in and make all of our classified employees feel appreciated and loved. I will be brainstorming with my team to come up with ideas on how to get the word out so that they can express their appreciation to our classified employees. I'm going to close tonight by saying thank you again for your integrity. Keep asking those hard questions and really thinking over the answers. A wise person is quick to listen and slow to answer. I know how hard Jared and the rest of the cabinet work. I see it every day. I hear it in their voices, and I see it on their faces. I have total respect for them. But as you, as a board, ask those tough questions, you keep them honest and accountable. I'm not saying anything negative about our cabinet, for I have faith in them, and I trust them, and I have respect for them. But everyone needs that accountability factor to keep us focused and on the right track. We are a much better team with that in mind, so please continue to ask those hard questions and continue to weigh those answers deeply, and we can come to the best conclusions when we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martz. We do not have any school consolidation updates tonight, so that brings us to public comment. I only have 2 speaker cards, but I see your Odyssey of the Mind sweatshirt. You sure you don't want to put in a speaker card?
Oh, I did. It's not regarding that, though.
Oh.
I'll be speaking, don't worry.
Okay. Then we have 2 public speakers, Mr. Greg Wall, and then you must be Ms. Jade Mesa? Mesa. Thank you.
Good evening. I broke my glasses, so you'll have to excuse the look. Good evening, school board members, Mr. Critchfield, and cabinet. I'm Greg Wall, a history teacher at Amador High School, and I return to you tonight after trying to provide a different perspective at the last meeting. I tried to emphasize that quality education begins with quality teachers, and the district should prioritize fair pay. My key line tonight is a quote from John Sullivan, a community college English professor and the secretary for the Community College Association. So, quote, "Raises increase wages above the current level adjusted for inflation with COLA. A raise is meant to increase buying power, not to keep up with inflation. The latter is the purpose of COLA." And that's from a December 23 California Educator article. I went to the Department of Finance website to see if there was any justification for a school district to withhold the COLA from its teaching staff. There was very little I could find other than the constant phrasing, the funding was to offset budget problems due to inflationary impacts on living. Even the glossary for the budgetary terms points out that COLA is, quote, increases in state-funded programs that are periodic. That means this school year, educational entities have the power to help the employees maintain their buying power. To me, this fits directly with the union position. The district does not get to fund different priorities with monies designated for higher costs of living. They knew about this increase 11 months ago, and I'm here today asking the board to provide direction to the district negotiating team to ensure the teaching staff is dealt with fairly. In 2023, the state determined they had the funding for the school districts to keep pace with increasing costs. This district needs to do the same. Teacher salaries are currently over 9% below the rate of inflation with the pace of our pay. ACTA does not ask for anything exorbitant, and in fact purposely made our offer recognizing the complexities of the district budget. I would certainly hate to think the district prioritized the cost of consolidation over monies designated to help the people. Over the years, the state has issued COLAs from negative 0.39 to 0 and all the way up to positive 13.26. This year's amount of 8.22% means millions of increased base funding. I believe the board has the influence to instruct the district to properly compensate the quality teachers who strive for quality education. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and my name is Jade Lucerito Mesa, and I'm a teacher in this district. I adore my school community. Our students and families and staff at Pine Grove make it really easy to be a teacher. I have parent volunteers that help every week. One comes in on Wednesdays to help me teach improv activities. And I am also a coach for Odyssey of the Mind. We're going to finals in 2 months in Iowa State. First time, hey. Thank you. Over 50% of my class is at or above grade level in reading, and about 23% are approaching grade level. My second graders are excelling in their current currency unit, coins, and my third graders can divide and multiply like no tomorrow. But why am I touting all these amazing facts? Well, despite this data, my 7 years of experience, my grade evaluations, my bilingual teaching credential, and a master's in teaching, U5, along with Dr. Adrian Palazuelos, excuse me for saying that wrong, you guys decided to pink slip me for next year. This despite our school having one teacher with no teaching credential who is getting paid teacher salary, not emergency sub salary. I get dismissed. The Probe 2 teacher, right here on the second to last page, versus the Probe 0 teacher on our last page. Would you like to see it, or you guys saw this already? Oh, you can't respond, I forgot. Jim Whitaker of District 4 representing Pine Grove. How will you explain your decision to our community? How can you willingly violate the Williams case notice with a misassignment of a teacher with no credential? Families here today and members of Amador County Unified, are you going to allow this? I'm embarrassed by your lack of professionalism and poor decision-making. You are a disservice to our stakeholders as of March 6th. Like the teachers in your district, you should use evidence and data-based practices. I invite you to come to room 17, my classroom, which you saw on March 8th, to see what you're getting rid of. You might learn what leadership in education looks like. So thank you, and please be sure to do your due diligence before dismissing any more good teachers. Thank you, stakeholders, board, do better. You are elected officials. Thank you.
So that concludes public comment. On the consent agenda, I would like to point out that the minutes are not available, that our last meeting had a lot of back and forth, and it took a little extra time, so we will have those minutes at the beginning of next meeting.
I also want to point out, Julie, if I can, that we did make one addition that we noticed as the meeting began to the consent agenda. She's actually in the room too. So Sinead Clement has been recommended to be promoted as the principal of Jackson Junior High School starting next year.
So that's a change to the.
Correct. That is now on there
HR.
if you refresh under HR, under consent.
Does anybody have any questions relating to the consent agenda or comments?
Make sure I have this right. There was in the warrants, there was a vandalism charge for an Argo portable. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what was that? What did that stem from? Was that someone break into a classroom, or I've never seen that before in the documents.
Our cameras are working really well. And so we have, in a situation like this, someone was caught vandalizing our facility. And so we have the ability to charge them for the vandalism. And so that's what that is.
Thank you.
If there are no questions. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. It's on Allied Benefit Systems, the excess anthem claims. I'm sorry I didn't ask you about that earlier, but I just don't understand that.
So as we switched health insurance this year, and so now as Newfront being our intermediary, we work through Allied to pay the premiums for employee health insurance. So that takes the district contribution and the employee contributions, and then those are paid to Allied to then cover health insurance for our employees. So that's what that comes from.
Okay, because it says excess anthem claims.
Correct. So yeah, when there's excess claims, those still need to be paid. Again, it comes through the health insurance. It's just our process has changed since in the past, everything just went to CVT. Now it gets broken down a little bit more in detail with how we do it with Newfront.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? If there are no questions, would somebody make a motion?
I'll move that we approve item 13, the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll do roll call vote. Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any communications tonight, and we only have a few discussion action items. First, we have the 2023-24 second interim budget certification. Mr. Critchfield.
Yes, I'm bringing forward an amended second interim based on what occurred last board meeting, and so some changes have been made. When you look at second interim, I just want to explain what it covers and also maybe a few things on what it doesn't cover. So second interim is our financial actuals, our actual expenditures through the end of January, and then it's a projection of expenditures for February through the end of the fiscal year. And so with second interim, it's referred to as a budget, but it's actually a mixture of actual expenditures and then budgeted expenditures to get us through the fiscal year. And so the first attachment in your agenda is the one that's going to be the most helpful. I believe that I put together for you, taking all of that financial data. And so this is a representation of the work of numerous individuals in the business office who work very tirelessly and are very dedicated to their craft. I want to specifically mention our fiscal director, Robert Norton, and our two fiscal analysts, Terry McCrory and Lydia Cooper, who all three of them do a fantastic job and do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to our budgets. So on the second page of this document, you'll see how our revenue is broken down and how it comes in, and how 79% of our overall revenue comes from the local control funding formula. Again, that money comes from the number of students we have and how often they attend school. The state has assigned a dollar amount for grade spans. So you have your transitional kindergartners through third graders that receive a dollar amount based on the ADA or average daily attendance. Fourth through sixth grade have a different dollar amount, seventh and eighth grade, and then ninth through 12th grade. And then starting this year with some of the new transitional kindergarten requirements, there's also what's referred to as a TK add-on. And so then there's an extra bit of money for our TK students for the average daily attendance. But again, we are funded on how often they attend school, not how many students we have. And so that we staff and do everything accordingly to all of our students, but the funding comes in based on attendance. And as you can see, that makes up almost 80% of our total revenue. And so the number of students we have and how often they attend school does truly matter on when it comes to our revenue.
Sir, is this slideshow able to be on the projector?
Yeah, if Des would like to throw it up there, it's the first attachment. No problem. I'll just wait a minute, if that's okay, for her to get it up there.
Now it works.
We're going to take a quick recess
got
for
the
the screen to load, I think.
Yeah, that's fine.
PowerPoint or the PDF to load. So we're going to proceed.
Yeah, I apologize for that, but it is an attachment in the agenda, and anybody watching or intending can get to that through our district website and see it's the first attachment in the documents. It's labeled District-Second Interim Budget-2023-2024 is the attachment that I'm referring to that Mr. Marzano asked about. So if we move to expenditures, then you will see how it's broken down, our certificated salaries. So that's all of our teachers and administrators who must possess a credential to function in their job duties. And then our classified salaries, which is a wide variety of our employees, from secretaries to custodians to bus drivers. And then you can see that employee benefits are demonstrated there as well. Benefits are grouped together. That's classified and certificated benefits. That's health and welfare benefits. That's retirement benefits and any other taxes that may apply. In the next slide, which is the first slide on page 3 of that document, I've combined those 3 categories because that is the cost of all of our employees. That's employees' salary and benefits, certificated and classified. So you can see that makes up a little over 48 million of our expenditures, or about 73% of total expenditures. Tonight, what I do want to highlight is this second slide on page 3, and that has to do with the multi-year projection. So in a multi-year projection, this is part of the adopted budget that I bring to the board every June, and it's required to be part of first interim and second interim budget. It's a reflection of the current year projections and then the next 2 fiscal years. So you'll see 2024 and 25 and 2025 and 26. Based on our situation with employees being paid out of one-time funds, you will see that next year we will reduce our overall reserve total by about $300,000. That has to do with using essentially all of our one-time funds that were designated for COVID or learning loss on employees next year. Some of those funds actually don't expire until 2028, but based on our current pace, they will be expended by the end of next year. And what I'm required to do in a multi-year projection is to demonstrate what would happen if those positions were to continue. So what happens in the 2025-26 school year is we no longer have the one-time funds to fund those positions, and if those positions remain, then those monies must shift to unrestricted funds. And what it does at this current time is project us to overspend by more than $1 million in the 2025-26 school year in unrestricted monies, which would bring us below the state required minimum of 3% reserves. We're projected to have at this point in time 2.75% reserves. Okay. And so as we get to the end, I will discuss this more at the end, but we have 3 options when we certify a budget: positive, qualified, and negative. Negative being the worst of the 3 certifications, essentially saying we will not meet our financial obligations in either the current year or the next year. When my recommendation tonight will be to certify as qualified, which means we may not meet our financial obligations in any of the 3 years demonstrated. And based on the current projections for the 2025-26 school year, I'm projecting less than 3% reserves. And so my recommendation is that we certify as qualified. Now, again, there's still quite a bit of time between now and the 25-26 school year. So I also want to balance that by not acting like the sky is falling either, but we need to be very cautious as we move into the new fiscal year. I do have serious concerns about the outlook of our state budget. While there was a budget presented by the governor in January, for the first time since I've become CBO in the last 7 years, the Legislative Analyst's Office, which is a function of the government, and the governor are differing on the state budget deficit numbers. And so that is extremely concerning that the LAO does not agree with the governor's budget projections, and they're projecting an even larger deficit. My other concern has to do with this year's COLA. That's been talked about a lot. This year's COLA, while it is shown as a funded COLA, it was acknowledged by the governor that that the state did not actually have the money to fund that COLA. So they have essentially taken the cost of that COLA and spread it out over the next 3 fiscal years. So not only does the state have to handle the current budget projections and how state taxes have come in lower than anticipated, they basically wrote themselves an IOU, and they have to fund the COLA that was already funded in this current year. And so those are just a couple of items that bring about concern when it comes to the current budget outlook. We have not been in this situation with state forecasts in a while. The last time we were looking at a dire state budget was right after COVID hit. Not that we want to go back down memory lane too far during that time, but just as a short reminder, when the May revision came out in 2020, and schools were shut down just 2 months earlier in March of 2020, they were projecting a negative 10% COLA. And so there was obviously a lot of panic that ensued. That negative 10% COLA did not happen. They started the year with the 0% COLA, and then the first round of quite a few rounds of stimulus money came in, and we were able to offset any sort of negative aspects to the budget based on multiple rounds of federal and state COVID relief funding. And so since then, we've had fairly healthy COLAs over the last few years, but now the state budget outlook is a little bit more grim. And so, again, that is another reason why I recommend that we certify as qualified, because it's not everything in this is under our control. We have a lot that is under our control, and decisions that can be made over the next couple of years, but we also are subject to and a function of the state budget, and ultimately they will determine what our revenue will be next year and the following years. And so it remains to be seen on that. It's typical that there are changes from the January budget proposal to the May revision, and even from the May revision to the adopted budget in July. The budget that my team will build to present to you in June is actually not something that will be an adopted state budget. We're required to turn in our budget by June 30th. However, the state will not have that adopted typically till the bitter end, right at the end of June and sometimes the first week of July, but we're required to get that in. So all of the numbers you will see in the budget in June will be based off the May revision. And so there's still a lot that can happen between now and the May revision, and once that comes out, we'll have a lot more information to be able to share that with the board. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm just going to go down the line in case anybody has any questions. That way everybody has an opportunity. Mr. Crow, did you have any questions?
Not at this time, no.
Okay. Ms. Parker, did you have any questions for Mr. Critchfield?
I always have lots of questions about this, but not about this particular, no, not right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Marzano? Just rest assured I have questions, so.
You can always count on Miss Julia for questions. I had, Mr. Critchfield, at the last board meeting, you presented staffing cuts as a way to ensure the school district would have a balanced budget and
Correct.
a positive certification for the second interim report.
Correct.
Right. Can you explain how you determined the positions to eliminate?
All of the positions but two that were presented to the board were positions that were being paid for out of one-time monies.
And that's what made you determine that?
Correct. So if those positions were to remain, the one-time monies will be expended by the end of next school year, which means if those positions remain after next school year, then those positions get pushed to unrestricted monies, which is what turns that year's budget upside down.
And my further brain processing came up with, why did the district identify critical positions such as instructional aides and bus drivers?
So again, those positions were added with those COVID relief monies. And this is the challenge with one-time monies. Pre-COVID, there was a very simple rule of thumb with one-time monies, because we did receive one-time monies. And it was constantly said to CBOs, do not spend one-time monies on salaries, on people. And then when COVID relief came, the exact opposite is what was said. And it's actually a requirement of a majority of those one-time funds, where percentages, large percentages of those monies had to be spent on people.
Many people feel that, well, hold on. Is there a dollar amount that would equate to if we voted to eliminate all those? Just to like paint a beautiful picture for me?
The positions from last meeting?
Correct.
They totaled about $800,000 in salaries and benefits.
And that's annually?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Whitaker?
So, just in general, I know that your budget predictions, you figured in the cost of raises and everything, and that's figured in for this year and the outgoing years, correct?
Correct.
So, obviously, we're in a world of hurt, if we go beyond our means, spending more. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing here. I understand we have to have the 3%, and, the state says you have to have 3%, otherwise you're, quote, qualified, we'll still make our bills, but we'll be under closer scrutiny of the state. And if something were to come up, we wouldn't have enough, we wouldn't have enough to pay bills or something if something came up, so that's why we have the reserve.
Correct. So based on prior experience, going back to 2017-18 and then 18-19, when we did hit some pretty serious financial trouble, we did have a situation where the district was qualified and the county was negative, and then we actually finished the fiscal year with less than our 3% reserve. That's not what I'm projecting right now. I mean, I'm projecting that this year we will finish with our 3% reserve. If you get to that point of not having your 3% reserve, once you close your books, then typically the county office would step in and there would be measures they would take. Because we're a single school district county, that obligation and authority falls to the California Department of Education. So they can assign either a fiscal expert or a fiscal advisor. The fiscal advisor holds more weight than the expert. And that happened back in 2018-19. And CDE, because they struggle with staffing, they actually didn't do it with any of their staff. They contracted with a retired CBO, Linda Protine, who was the fiscal expert and fiscal advisor for the county and the district. And so, again, we're not there yet, but without making major changes, we could be there.
And
This, I don't want.
we don't want.
No, of course not. We don't want to be there. I don't want to go back to those years. I could share a lot more about how fun that was. However, I don't want this to get confused with state receivership, because it gets confused with that frequently. State receivership is actually fairly simple. You literally run out of money where you can't make payroll. And so then the state steps in and says, you have to make payroll. So they give you a loan, and then you are under the authority of the state receivership, until you pay off the loan.
At which point in time, we're not really making the decisions, the state is.
Oakland's been in state receivership for, I don't know how many years. It's been a long time. I don't want to misspeak. It's been more than a decade, if not pushing 20 years. Irvine's been in receivership for a long time.
Calaveras is close to going into it.
Yeah, I haven't looked deeply at Calaveras' numbers, but I know they're having some struggles too.
Yeah, and I'd hate to get there, so
I agree.
That's all I have.
Do you know, I forget which cartoon it is. I think it's Peanuts, when the teacher talks and it's wah, 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 wah. So I want to go back to something that you said, Jared, and I know that I say these things often and repetitively, but you keep coming to the meetings with these crazy things that I just can't believe that that's how school districts function, that we literally borrow money from our young citizens, money that is intended for the funding of their education, that the state government borrows that money and says, oh, we gave you that COLA, but now we can't afford it, so we're going to pay that to you over 3 years. Meanwhile, we are trying to balance that budget for those 3 years on money that hasn't come yet. And it's hard for me to understand how this is the way we continue to do business, that we expect you to balance this budget after the fact. Like, you finished the school year, and then they said, oh, but never mind. And I get a little bit angry, and I think the crazy mom eyes start to come out. I can feel my wrinkles start to deepen because I just can't believe that this is okay, that we have allowed this to, and I can't be the only school board trustee who sits on a dais in this state, and even after almost 4 years of hearing about this, it still astounds me every time when I hear you say these words. And I believe you. I'm not saying that you're not being factual. I know that you are. And I think that's the part that just, I cannot wrap my brain around it, because nobody is allowed to handle their finances in that fashion.
Well, I think the other thing that goes with that, that's a challenge. And I attempt, sometimes I'm good at it, to be more polished in a board meeting than I might be in my office when I'm muttering about the state budget. But I think the challenge is the goalposts move pretty frequently. And that's one of the challenges that school districts run into. And I mean, we're seeing it all around the state, numerous districts approving layoffs. And then it will not surprise me once the information comes out on second interim, because FCMAT does surveys on each interim, that the number of qualified and negative budgets across the state will have increased since first interim, and definitely will have increased since last year, just given the economic forecast.
Is the funding process made through legislation, or is these just like more arbitrary things that the government has just passed down?
No, there's Prop 98 is what funds education, and it's a very complex. You want to talk about want. I don't even want to attempt explaining Prop 98 if that's okay.
I do. I would prefer you didn't.
Okay.
That would be great.
But Prop 98 is a function of the state budget, and it was intended to be a floor for education funding. In other words, based on a myriad factors, that education funding would not dip below a certain percentage of the state budget. However, in the majority of years since Prop 98, it has not just functioned as a floor, it has also functioned as a ceiling, where education gets funded right at the minimum for Prop 98. Now, again, over the last few years, there has been stimulus money and other things that have exceeded Prop 98. But again, like I said, those one-time monies are going away. The state budget is not looking good, and we're right back to Prop 98 floor being our ceiling.
And has anybody, I'm sure they have, and I'm not trying to go down this major rabbit hole here right now, but have there been any other people trying to bring perhaps better legislation and ways to fund education in California? Because this is wild. And the more things I learn about this, because I'm pretty new to this whole game, is just kind of mind-blowing, honestly. And
I work with 3 different entities that all do their best to push forward with potential legislation that would help us better fund schools. For example, I was involved a couple years ago. We saw an opportunity with attendance dropping so low based on COVID, where you're funded on your attendance, and then we were quarantining kids for 30 days. So, we could talk about the educational aspect of quarantining a kid, but then there's the financial aspect of now they have 30 days of absences, right? And so then, as CBOs, I'm involved with an association called BASC, that is the Business Administration Steering Committee that functions under the California County Superintendent of Schools. So that's all the county CBOs across the state. We get together once a month. And so we put together what's called a common message and put those things out on what we, in our opinion, is all the county CBOs in the state saying what we think should happen. We also get involved with CASBO, the California School Business Officials Association, and they push forward with a lot of lobbying for things. And then we also work with Capital Advisors, led by Kevin Gordon, that also push for these things. But as an example, in advocacy, we push forward trying to get a bill approved that would base our funding on enrollment, not on attendance percentage. Because the argument was schools are going to still do everything in their power to make sure kids attend school frequently, because we are interested in educating them. And we know that the more often they show up, the more likely it is that they're going to perform well. And so instead of holding that over our heads as a funding mechanism of you better get them to school a lot or you lose funding, just fund us on enrollment. Just keep it that simple. And that didn't happen. So, we continue to push and try, and there have been things that have moved forward in a positive way, but it continues to be a challenge, no doubt.
I have another question.
Sure.
2 of them. You had said, and I was trying to scribble it down really fast. You said these 2 entities, what did you call them? They differed. They weren't the same this year.
Oh, no, you were talking about the Legislative Analyst's Office and the governor.
Correct. Okay, so have they differed in the past?
They will differ at times, but this is the widest gap I've seen between their projected budget deficits in my time.
What have we done in the past when they have differed?
Well, eventually, something has to be enacted, right? So this is the,
By whom, them or us?
well, the state legislature has to enact the
Right,
budget
okay.
eventually. But the legislative analyst's office is one of their main tasks is to project the future financials of the state, especially the near future. So they're analyzing, you know, and I've said this before in a past meeting, one of the things with California that's a challenge is when you look at like the national landscape, California, when things are going well, California tends to do better than the national average financially. But conversely, when things start to go south, California tends to do worse than the national average. And we are incredibly dependent on the top 1% of earners in this state. And a large, large portion of state revenue comes from those top 1% of earners through what's called the personal income tax, another great acronym, the PIT, personal income tax. And so that is something where, as the financial landscape tends to look bleaker, the top 1% of earners tend to hold on to their money more and they don't spend it. And so then they don't pay as much in taxes. And so, or they leave, correct. So again, that's just kind of in the situation we're in where they extended tax deadlines based on COVID. And then what happened is the taxes didn't come in as they had projected. And so now it's like, okay, what are we going to do about this?
Because these are projections.
These are always projections. The one thing I can guarantee, and I should have said at the beginning, is these numbers are wrong. Just our goal is to get them close, right? I mean, because like I said, the landscape changes so frequently. We know, you know, I'm basing this off of a January projection that is most likely going to change in a May revise and could change from a May revise to a July adopted budget.
Does it anticipate or include the current offers with negotiations?
It includes the board direction for offers for salary, yes. That's already built in this budget.
So I mean, nobody likes to have anything less than a positive budget certification, obviously. However, I feel like the message of a qualified budget certification, not just because we did not approve layoffs, but also coupled with the fact that we have a unique budget forecast and some clawback happening, sort of. I think that that's a good message for Sacramento, not to be in favor of a qualified certification, but I think that sometimes it's a necessary thing.
It is. It also will require us to do a third interim, so we would bring that to you in May.
Okay.
And again, that can bring even more clarity. We'll be further along in the fiscal year. It'll be expenses through April. We may have more information with the outlook of the state budget, and so then we can make adjustments to the out years as well.
So would that meeting be before or after the May revise?
It most likely will fall. I'm looking at the deadline with the state and when the governor will come out. They're going to come out so close together. I don't think we can build third interim with May revise factored in. It's just going to be, there won't be enough time with when we publish the board packet and when it becomes public. But May revise will definitely be factored into the June annual budget adoption for next year and beyond. And then we'll add another year, right? We're only a couple months away from this multi-year projection showing another fiscal year, right? Like right now, while we call it a 3-year projection, it's not really a 3 full year projection, right? We're 3/4 of the way through this year, and then it shows the next 2, where in June, it'll start with next year's budget, which means we'll tack on the 26-27 budget to that in the multi-year projection.
Okay. Are there any final questions? If not, I think we are ready for a motion to approve the qualified certification.
I have another question.
Okay.
Just to help me better understand this. Positive means will meet, qualified means may not meet, negative means will not meet.
Correct.
And
That's for all 3 years we're looking at. It's
Right.
not just current year.
And so you're saying qualified because if I go back here to colors and shapes, if I go back here, you're really only hitting on 25, 26 is your concern.
Correct. At this point in time.
And you're feeling that we're gonna miss the mark because we're gonna be 1/4% below our reserves.
Correct. Now, remember, we've talked about this before. 3% reserves, while it's a state minimum, that doesn't even cover 1 month of payroll. So even if you have your 3% reserve, that is not enough cash to execute a single month of payroll.
Yeah, what do you say, 80% of our money is paying people?
What I showed tonight is 73%.
73%, right. And of course, it's a projection, and there's a possibility somewhere in your magical computer, you make it work.
Well, I mean, again, we're going to analyze everything coming in and going
On the
out
bottom.
from now until the end of the year as we build the budget. And then, again, we still don't know what next year's budget will actually look like based on state funding. Through vacancies, through attrition, through looking at all non-employee expenditures and any reductions that we can make, we're gonna look at those. But how I've been instructed to look at an interim budget is not built on hopes and dreams, on things that might happen, right? It's based on the current situation and the current projections. This is where we'll end up.
And this presentation is based on everything that you've explained to us currently, not including other options.
Correct. And I had mentioned Irvine being in receivership. It's Inglewood. I apologize for that. SoCal, starting with an I.
Irvine's hella rich.
It's Inglewood. It's Inglewood.
Irvine's got money.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Critchfield? Can I ask for a motion?
I have another question, I'm sorry. What happens if the board says, no, we're not going to approve a qualified budget?
That's a great question, actually. So this is what can happen. The board can approve any of these 3 certifications.
Sure.
CDE, after reviewing, has the authority to either concur or downgrade our budget. So if the board, for example, approved a positive budget tonight, and then CDE reviews that budget, CDE could say that they don't agree, and they could downgrade our certification to qualified anyway. Nope, no penalty.
Do you know like what the threshold is? Is it 0.25% for reserve lackage?
Anytime you're demonstrating having less than your 3% reserve, you should certify as qualified.
Sorry,
That's okay.
my brain's running.
Is anybody willing to make a motion?
I move to approve item 15.1, interim budget certification.
Thank you, Mr. Crow. Second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
No.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes, so that is a 4-1. Mr. Marzano, did you want to make any explanation on your no vote?
I just feel we short-sold ourselves by not I don't know, I think we should, how do you say it? Observe everything in its entirety, all options, which he obviously said we didn't do. We will do down the road.
We're always looking at options.
Sure.
We've done it for months and we'll continue to.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't know if that made sense, but that's my answer.
okay, thank you. For 15.2, we have Christie White Incorporated Auditing Services, a new 3-year contract. Mr. Critchfield.
I consider this to be very positive for us. We, as you know, we had our struggles with our last auditing firm as we were months and months behind on our 2021-22 audit. So they continued to tell us that they were short-staffed. I did my best to try to work with them through that, seeing as we operate short-staffed all the time. So I did not have a ton of sympathy for we're short-staffed. And so we had to send, I believe, 6 or 7 extension letters to the state when our 21-22 audit was past due. So what that means is our 22-23 audit is already past due because we were just trying to get 21-22 done. We did what's called a request for proposal. So we put out advertisements to auditing firms, and we had quite a few that expressed interest. We ended up with 2 auditing firms that formally submitted offers. Christie White Incorporated has a great reputation. The districts I talked to, they said that they have never once used being short-staffed as a reason. They've had their budgets completed on time. They also work with 3 other single school district counties in the state, which provides great relief to us, because every time we've taken on a new auditor, it feels like we spend the first 2 months trying to get them to understand what a single is and how it functions. And so they already know that because they've done successful audits with 3 other singles. And so this is a 3-year contract, but it's actually going backwards because we still have the 22-23 audit to complete. They have a plan to get that done by this fall, and then there are some things they can do to work on the 23-24 audit concurrently. Normally this time of year, in the spring, you're working on the 23-24 audit, even though the fiscal year hasn't completed yet, you're jumping all over it so that it can be done by January. Ideally, your audit should be done by January of the following year, so 6 months after you close the books, essentially. And so they laid out a plan for us that I have confidence that we can complete, that will get the 22-23 audit done this fall, and then in January come to you with the 23-24 audit and be back on time with our audits.
So did we finish 21-22?
Yes, 21-22 was completed, approved by the board, accepted by the state, and all of that, like 8 months late.
And just, I feel like I've asked this question before, but I just can't remember anything these days. This is a requirement of the state, right? They
Yes.
require you to have this, so this is money that must be spent on this particular thing.
Correct. You have to hire an independent auditing firm, and they have to meet certain qualifications in order to be considered an independent auditing firm, and then they provide this to us. Obviously, it takes a lot of energy and effort and a lot of staff to go through our books, and then we have to pay for that audit. It gets presented to the board. The board action on that is you accept the audit. Whether it's one of those, like, whether you like it or not, like it's already happened and this is what the auditors have found, and then it gets sent to the state controller's office for review. And then typically there are questions that happen after that we work with the auditor and the state controller's office to clarify anything that they might identify in that audit. But yeah, this is a requirement.
Mr. Crow, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Did you have any additional questions? Mr. Marzano?
I have some questions. Can you explain what the difference between RFP and RFQ is and why we chose one over the other?
They're essentially, in many ways, they're the same thing. There's a few differences. An RFQ is a request for qualifications. You can put out a request for qualifications to see what entities might be interested, and if they are qualified to be able to do work that you're proposing to do. A request for proposal is you're asking entities to put forward what's in the title, a formal proposal on what the work would include. And so that's what we needed. There wasn't time to like go out for an RFQ, see what auditors are qualified, and then go back for an RFP. You can just jump to an RFP and see who's willing to put forward an offer and work with us moving forward.
Who sits on the proposal committees?
So it just depends on the work that's being done. So something like this is purely a business office function. So the fiscal team, so Robert, Terry, and Lydia, who I mentioned earlier, and myself, we reviewed the 2 offers from the audits. We contacted references as one of the requirements. We asked them to put references in there, and especially after, we liked Christie White's offer better than the other company from the outset, and then once we contacted references, the other auditing firm, some of the references said they'd been behind on their audits, and I really don't want to go down that path again.
And there was just the 2 that received the RFP?
Formal proposal, yeah. The last time we went out, Ede Bailey, our prior auditor, they were the only offer we got.
Is that standard?
Auditing firms are hard to come by now. We don't typically see, a lot of auditors putting forth offers. It's just one of those challenges.
I wrote down what was the criteria listed in the RFP, and what weight was given to each criterion. Like 25% on price, 10% on experience with the single, I mean, because we're a single, that's the thing. Did they have to have experience with that? What was the criteria when doing this?
So when you deal with an RFP, you don't have to deal with any formal criteria. So we don't have like a set formal criteria. And when you get two offers, it essentially became just putting those offers side by side and comparing the two. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I had another question. Why does the new auditor have to re-audit the 2023s?
That hasn't been audited.
It hasn't at all?
No, because they were behind on the 21-22 audit. And our last auditing firm only completed the 21-22 audit.
Okay, the Eid Bailey.
Eid Bailey. So 22-23 has not been touched yet.
And why did they leave, did you say? Why we're not using them again, or?
When you say you're short-staffed and you're 8 months behind, it becomes fairly mutual that we no longer want to work together.
Roger that.
Okay.
So our 3-year contract that we have will actually be for prior years, so we need to redo another contract after 20,
Yeah,
whatever.
2 years from now, we'll need to
Okay.
come back with more
Okay.
because we're going backwards a year and then doing the next 2. Yeah.
And so because we didn't do that one, like, are we out of compliance for something? Did you say that already?
Well, you have to apply for extensions with the state, which we've
Right.
done.
Yeah.
We got pretty good at those with our last audit. So, yeah, we've applied for the extension. Sorry, I shouldn't say.
So obviously, even though we had a contract with eBailey for that year, it is now, like, we're getting out of that, right? Like, is there,
We had an option for 22-23 and we just
Okay.
mutually agreed to.
okay, got it.
No.
That's what
No, they did not get paid for the 22-23.
I was gonna
We
say,
didn't lose money on the deal.
all right,
We did not.
okay.
Just time.
Mr. Critchfield, you mentioned that there were, that this company, Christie White, works with this other single districts. Do you know what districts those are?
I forgot to bring that list off the top. I'm sorry. I can get it to you, though.
Okay.
Are there any additional questions? This item seems pretty straightforward. If anybody is prepared to make a motion?
I'll move to approve item 15.2, Christy White Auditing Services, 3-year contract.
I'll go ahead and second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Critchfield. So I don't know who's presenting this next item. It is the 24 through 26 Teachers College of San Joaquin Co-Sponsor Agreement Impact Intern Program.
It says it inside. Dr. P.
Dr. Palazuelos.
Good evening. Good evening, trustees, board president Burns. So this is a 2-year agreement with the Teachers College of San Joaquin for their Impact Intern Program. We're recommending approval of this particular agreement. We have, matter of fact, just today, I was talking to one of our staff who's in this program and finishing up their program requirements. And ideally, by the end of May, we'll be fully we'll have their teaching credential through this program. Ultimately, we'll have the ability to work with them. They're fantastic in communicating to us the progress of our students or of our teachers that are in the program. One of the requirements is that for interns, these are individuals that are working towards your credential while teaching in the classroom. They would have to be employed in a teaching assignment that is authorized by a standard credential being pursued, and in this case, a mild, moderate support needs, extensive support needs, early childhood special education, a multiple subject or single subject. There are other requirements. We're recommending approval with the shortage of qualified educators in the state of California. Internship programs have been a critical lifeline for us in schools, and this is a great opportunity for us to continue our partnership with Teachers College of San Joaquin.
Does anybody have any questions on this item?
Is there, I don't see it, usually it says it on here, is there any fiscal?
I was going to
impact
ask
this?
that.
Yeah.
It's a secret. No, I'm just kidding. No,
No secrets here.
in all sincerity. So this actually, the costs for the program are borne by the students themselves. So they're actually in the intern program, they're receiving compensation from us, a salary from us. And then to be in this program, they will pay their tuition expenses directly to the program. The larger part for us is that we're willing to accept these folks working towards their credentials, and will allow things such as the videotape, video recording of lessons that are part of the teacher performance assessments, that are part of lesson reviews that they'll do. And so there's no cost to us per se. It really is to our students, but the key piece for us is the linkage with Teachers College of San Joaquin. I have been in different areas of the state where I've worked with institutes of higher education, and I will tell you that it is a phenomenal price point to have something like Teachers College of San Joaquin compared to some of the other programs I've seen. I've had teachers that have gone through programs that have amassed significant debt, earning their teaching credentials, versus some of the price points that I've seen here with Teachers College of San Joaquin. And I'm not speaking ill of those. Everyone chooses their own path for credentialing. This is a fantastic path. We have a number of people that are working through their program with Teachers College of San Joaquin, and I recommend them without reservation.
Thank you, Dr. Palazuelos. Are there any questions?
I'll go ahead that we approve, motion that we approve item 15.3, the Teachers College of San Joaquin agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Thank you. And our last item, we have a board policy update being presented by Dr. Hedegaard.
Thank you, Board. Hello. Yes, the policy that I am presenting to you this evening is in regards to differentiated graduation and competency standards for students with disabilities. The board policy is now required as a result of Senate Bill 114 that was put into place and adjusts Education Code 51.2 to 5.31. But anyways, what the change in the law highlights is that now we as a local entity have the ability to have graduation requirements that exceed that of the state in order to obtain a diploma. And so this board policy will acknowledge that for our individuals with disabilities, specifically those in 9th grade as of the 22-23 school year, that we will design an alternative path to a diploma for them and would not have the additional requirements above the state requirements to receive a diploma. Further, that those individuals would be able to participate in our graduation events as they do now, but just in affirming that they have that right. As well as recognizing that although they would receive a diploma, if they receive it through this alternative path, that then they still have rights to a free and appropriate public education and through their IEP until the age of 22. So currently, students are eligible to a free and public education, their IEP, until a diploma or 22. And this acknowledges that if we have this alternative path, once we design the alternative path, they can receive a diploma at the age of 18 with their same age peers, but they'll continue to be eligible to receive services through the district until age 22. I am recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hedegaard. Are there any questions from the dais?
Not particularly about this, but just when they say they want to put this through, and this, I think this is fabulous, but they're saying that they can graduate and then the district will be responsible for services until they're 22. Is that also being funded? Because that's a big, like, we are responsible for services from 3-year-olds before they enter kindergarten, and now we're responsible after they graduate from when they're 18 to 22. Is there funding for that?
Not any additional funding, no. I will highlight that the students that are eligible for this, so one of the stipulations, and it's highlighted in the policy itself, the population of students that will actually be eligible for the alternative pathway, they also have to be identified as participating in the California Alternative Assessment. So right now, that is approximately around 20 students in our entire district. And so this is not something that if students are participating in the SBAC assessments regularly, for example, mild to moderate classrooms, they would not be eligible for this. They would still be able to receive a certificate of completion or earn a diploma And so I do want to kind of highlight the majority of the population of students that this will impact, they would be eligible to transition into our adult transition program, and we're currently serving them now. So it's just acknowledging that they would meet the requirements of the diploma and then still be able to participate in adult transition. But directly answering your question, no, there is no additional funding that comes with this obligation.
So I guess the partner question to that is, did this change in policy require additional services from us? It does, because normally if they graduate, then services would stop, correct?
Yes, however, I think the flip side of a way of looking at this is that the students that this is going to impact, they're going to be awarded a diploma and otherwise wouldn't have met the standards that we have set in order to receive one. So it's really, this movement and initiative is about affording individuals with disabilities that otherwise wouldn't have been able to meet in a diploma in the normal pathway, with an alternative pathway that then they show meeting the standards through separate activities. This is actually going to be a year-long project that we're going to design and work with our instructional staff on what does this pathway look like. We're going to define that next year. But really, so then it's more about being able to give them alternative ways to show competency in receiving a diploma, so that then they have a more competitive stance in the workforce and being able to be employed in post-secondary opportunities at large. So I don't think that we're going to see any additional services, actually. I think it's really just a stipulation. We would be serving these students regardless in the capacity that, we currently are.
So there's no net difference, no net impact?
No.
Okay.
And when you talk about, that we have higher standards, and I'm just going to kind of choose social science, for example, we have a requirement of 3.5 years of social science, and the state requires how many years of social science?
I think just 2, is that?
2.
Yeah.
So
just 2.
they'd only have to complete 2 to
Correct.
get their diploma, and so the extra classes that we have, they wouldn't be responsible for.
That's correct.
In what you were just explaining right now, it popped into my head to ask, have any of our students not received their diploma because they haven't met a criteria? Have we ever not graduated somebody?
Yes.
We have.
Yeah, and I mean, each year we look at, students that they complete their 12th grade regardless if they're a general education student or a special education student. We also look at then if they don't meet the requirements for the diploma, they can be eligible if they're a special education student for a certificate of completion. Usually it is identified if they're not meeting standards earlier, and it's not something that is a decision that we want to be made in the 12th grade year. It's often something that is discussed in junior high or in the early years of high school, and they are placed into alternative programs as a result of that. But yes, we do have students that do not receive their diploma. They'll continue to work on it past their 12th grade year, but then there are other students, and this is part of the historical redirection, I guess, or correction that the state is trying to make, is that our students with disabilities are predominantly targeted to not meet the requirements for a diploma in a higher percentage rate than our general education students.
And what he was, just kind of piggyback off what he was asking, prior to this, where it was they can still receive their diploma and receive services through adult transition where they can get help with employment and those kind of things. Prior, if they chose to receive a diploma, they would no longer be able to receive those services. So would some people potentially choose not to receive a diploma so that they could access those services still? Is that something that they would do or no?
I think there's a potential for that. But I would say, in general, the transition and decision as to whether or not a student with special education is a certificate of completion versus a diploma track student, that's an IEP team decision. So I would say, our staff and administrative designee, all individuals that have a vested interest in supporting that student, including the family, participate in that. So while I think it could be seen as an incentive in a way, I don't know that it actually occurs that often.
I just want to say I think this is an excellent policy, and I really think it's providing a fair opportunity for our special education students, just like all our other students. So I think it's needed.
Are there any additional questions or comments? If not, we are ready for a motion to approve.
I will move to approve item 15.4, the board policy updates.
I'll second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Shane, yes. Shane
Mrs.
says yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Thank you, Dr. Hadergaard. That brings us to board reports. Mr. Critchfield?
Yes, thank you. Don't have a whole lot to update since our last board meeting. We haven't had too many school days. We had our spring break in between, and I know many people enjoyed having that time off. We are now on the home stretch as we're in the fourth quarter of the school year. I know state testing has begun at both of our high schools. Just around the corner is AP testing and state testing at our other levels throughout the district, and before you know it, we'll be towards graduation. So very soon, we will be sending out to the board our graduation times and dates and everything so that we can hear from you on which ceremonies you'll be attending. And we don't have our student board members here tonight. As you already know, they are extremely busy, so they both apologize for not being here. But I'm always amazed that Peyton and Maeve actually make it here, to be honest, because of how much they do outside of the classroom and inside the classroom. So they both unfortunately could not make it tonight.
When do AP tests start?
May. They're normally the first 2 weeks of May.
Part of May-cember.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry, are you done?
I am done.
Thank
you.
Mr. Crow?
Nothing to report.
Mrs. Parker?
No, I don't have anything.
Mr. Marzano?
I don't have a report for tonight.
Mr. Whitaker?
No report.
Okay, I am going to follow suit. I will have no report. Thank you so much. Our next meeting, as soon as it loads for me, is going to be Wednesday, April 17th, tentatively scheduled to be held at the Amador County Administration Building here. Open session will start at 6:30 p.m. and we are adjourned. It is 8:18, 19? 18. And we will roll right into the county meeting in just a moment. I'm just going to load the next agenda. Education Board meeting is going to be called to order at 8:19. Everyone is present tonight. Mr. Critchfield, are there any deletions or corrections to the agenda?
None at this time.
Thank you. We have no presentations or recognitions. For our employee organizations, for SEEK, we do not have Mrs. Crow, and for CSEA, Ms. Matheson, I do not see her either. Okay. I do not have any public comment cards for non-agenda items. That brings us to the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? All we have is warrants.
I move to approve item 8, the consent agenda.
A second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker has stepped out, so He will not be voting, and I am a yes. We have no communications on the county side. We have 3 discussion action items, which are roughly companion pieces. Mr. Critchfield.
Yes, so the first item is our budget revisions that needs to come before second interim approval. This item was actually pulled from last board meeting, given the circumstances with pulling the budgets. However, there are no changes from last board meeting to this board meeting because the budget revisions are solely focused on current year expenditures and revisions. And so the document that's provided has explanations on the side showing you the minor adjustments to the budget. But like I've talked about many times, this is very typical as we work our way through the year on making minor adjustments to the budget. So we recommend that the board approve these revisions.
Does anybody have any questions on the budget revisions? There are, I'm going to give it another second. I would entertain a motion if you guys are ready.
I'll move to approve item 10.1, second interim budget revisions.
I'll second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes.
Thank you.
And the budget certification, Mr. Critchfield.
Correct. So on this item, again, I'm going to direct you to our first attachment of many in this item titled County-Second Interim Budget-2023-24. And so you'll see a similar presentation. There obviously are some differences. I think what I want to focus on tonight is the interdependency of our 2 budgets. It is, unique to be a single school district county. Things have been said in the past about the district supports the school district or the county supports the school district, the district supports the county or the county supports the school district. To be honest, I'll equate it to this. When we hit our financial trouble that I mentioned back in 2018-19, out of the gate, the question was asked, can one entity fail and not the other? And the state didn't have an answer to that at first. And the more they dug in, they basically said no. They either both fail or they both succeed. And so there's just so much interdependency between the 2 entities that our county office does not function as a traditional county office. And even when you look at the other singles, we even vary with how we utilize those funds, because when you're a single, you can do that. And so while we report these as 2 separate budgets that come forward to you as a board, in essence, they're one large budget. They really are. And so when I look at this, what you'll notice is in that interdependency in the multi-year projection, there is also a dip in funding in that 3rd year in the multi-year projection. The county office is required to have 4% in reserves, and we're projecting to have 2.86% in reserves. So the recommendation is to also certify as qualified. I believe it is the most prudent decision for our board to make, given that we're a single, that we should certify the same for both entities. And so again, because what happens is there are millions of dollars that the district sends to the county. So on the surface, it looks like, oh, the county budget is dependent on the district. However, there are millions of dollars worth of services that the county provides to district students. And so the district's essentially paying for that anyway. So how can we distinguish saying one is more dependent on the other? It kind of becomes a chicken and egg kind of scenario. So again, a lot of similarities. Obviously, the numbers are different because we are required to separate these 2 budgets. But for all intents and purposes, we really, when we're functioning as a group, while we have to delineate county and district expenses and revenues, it is one big budget in the end. So the recommendation is to certify as qualified.
Thank you, Mr. Critchfield. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, then we need a motion.
I move to approve item 10.2, 2023-24 second interim budget certification as qualified budget certification.
I will second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Mrs. Parker?
Yes.
Mr. Marzano?
No.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Mr. Marzano, as is our custom, did you want to make a comment on your no vote?
No, same.
Okay, thank you. And our last discussion action item is the companion item to the auditing contract. Mr.
Correct.
Critchfield.
So again, technically, we have to have two contracts, even though they'll be functioning with us as a single, they're doing a district audit and a county audit. So again, companion item, 3 years, we're in the same timeline as it was explained in the district meeting of still needing to go back and do the 22-23 audit and then work on the 23-24 audit, hopefully be back on time by January, this coming January, and then the third year would be the 24-25 audit. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
How often do you look to change auditors?
Typically every 3 to 5 years. 3-year contracts are fairly normal. There are some ed codes related to how long the lead auditor from an agency can be your auditor, but they can internally switch who that lead auditor is so you can stay with the same firm for an extended period of time. But yeah, 3 to 5 years is fairly normal.
Okay, are there any other questions about the auditing contract? No, we're ready for a motion.
I'll move that we approve item 10.3, the auditing services contract.
I'll second.
Thank you. For the roll call vote, Mr. Crow?
Yes.
Ms. Parker has stepped out. Mr. Marzano?
Aye.
Mr. Whitaker?
Yes.
I'm also a yes, so that is a 4-0 vote with 1 absent.
Thank you.
Okay, so for information only, we have the HR recommendations. There are a few items on there. Does anybody have any questions regarding the HR report? Okay, are there any additional reports, board reports?
I do not have an additional report.
Does anybody on the dais have an additional report? No. Okay. Then our next meeting is Wednesday, April 17th, the county meeting to immediately follow the district meeting here at the County Administration Building. And we are adjourned. It is 8:27.